Stop everything you're doing right now. 3 minutes ago, the most explosive audio recording in political history just hit the internet. And what you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about Donald Trump and Jasmine Crockett. This isn't just another political scandal. This isn't just another controversy. This is recorded proof of Donald Trump trying to bribe a sitting congresswoman with $50 million to stop talking about him. $50 million to buy her silence. $50 million to make her disappear from public life. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Jasmine didn't just refuse the bribe. She recorded the entire conversation. Every word, every threat, every desperate plea. And then she did something that will go down in history as the most savage political move ever made. She released it all. Every single second. With no editing, no cuts, no spin. Just raw, unfiltered proof that Donald Trump is exactly the corrupt, desperate criminal that everyone suspected he was. And the recording has already been shared 15 million times in 3 minutes. The internet is literally breaking from the traffic. Twitter is crashing. Facebook is overloaded. TikTok can't handle the demand. This is the story of how one fearless black woman just ended Donald Trump's career with a phone call he thought nobody would ever hear. This is the story of how $50 million became the worst investment in political history. This is the story of how justice finally caught up with a man who thought he was untouchable. But to understand why this recording is so devastating, you need to know what led up to this moment. You need to know why Trump was so desperate to silence Jasmine Crockett that he was willing to risk everything. You need to know why this phone call will be studied in history books for the next 100 years. Because what happened 3 minutes ago wasn't just politics. It was war. And Jasmine Crockett just won it with one perfectly executed battle plan. Let's start from the beginning. Why was Donald Trump so terrified of Jasmine Crockett that he was willing to commit federal crimes to silence her? The answer goes back to 6 months ago. Jasmine had been asking questions. Uncomfortable questions. Questions about Trump's business dealings. Questions about his foreign connections. Questions about money flowing through his companies that didn't make sense. But these weren't random accusations. Jasmine had documents. She had bank records. She had testimony from whistleblowers. She had built a case so airtight that even Trump's army of lawyers couldn't find holes in it. And every week she was releasing more evidence. Every congressional hearing she was asking harder questions. Every interview she was revealing more corruption. Trump's empire wasn't just cracking. It was collapsing in real time. His businesses were losing contracts. His political allies were distancing themselves. His legal team was jumping ship. For the first time in his life, Donald Trump was facing consequences he couldn't buy his way out of. That's when he decided to try buying Jasmine instead. The first approach came through intermediaries, wealthy donors, political operators, people who could make the offer without directly connecting it to Trump. They started with smaller amounts. $1 million for a charity of her choice if she would just tone down her criticism. Jasmine laughed them out of her office. They came back with $5 million, then $10 million, then $20 million. Each time, Jasmine's answer was the same. Not interested. Keep your dirty money. Find someone else to buy. But Trump was getting desperate. His poll numbers were tanking. His fundraising was drying up. Federal investigators were closing in. He needed Jasmine to stop talking, and he needed it to happen fast. That's when he made the mistake that would destroy him forever. He decided to make the offer himself. Personally. On a phone call that he thought was secure. Big mistake. Huge mistake. The kind of mistake that ends careers and starts prison sentences. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Jasmine was at home, reviewing documents for the next day's hearing. Her phone rang with a blocked number. She almost didn't answer it. Thank God she did. And thank God she had the presence of mind to start recording. The conversation started with Trump trying to sound friendly. Casual. Like he was just calling to chat with a fellow politician. But Jasmine could hear the desperation in his voice. The fear. The panic of a man watching his world crumble. Jasmine, he said. His voice trying to sound smooth but coming out shaky instead. I think we need to talk. Off the record. Just two people who want what's best for America. Jasmine knew immediately what this was about, but she played along. She wanted to see how far he would go, how much he was willing to confess on a recorded line. "What's on your mind, Donald?" she said, her voice calm and controlled. "Look," Trump said, dropping the pretense almost immediately. "I know you've been asking questions about my businesses. I know you think you've found something, but you're barking up the wrong tree. You're wasting your time and the taxpayers' money." Jasmine said nothing. She let the silence stretch. She knew that silence makes guilty people talk. And Trump talked. "But I respect what you're trying to do," he continued, his voice getting more urgent. "I respect your dedication to your constituents. And I think there might be a way for both of us to get what we want." Here it comes, Jasmine thought. The moment that would end him. "I have friends," Trump said. "Wealthy friends. People who believe in supporting promising young politicians like yourself. People who would be very interested in making a substantial contribution to your future political endeavors." "How substantial?" Jasmine asked, her voice giving away nothing. Trump took a deep breath. This was it. The moment he crossed the line from politician to criminal. $50 million, he said. $50 million in a legal, properly structured super PAC that would support your political career for decades. All you have to do is redirect your investigative energy toward issues that actually matter to your constituents. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, real problems that affect real people. The silence that followed was deafening. For 15 seconds, neither of them spoke. Trump was waiting for her answer. Jasmine was processing the fact that she had just recorded a federal crime in progress. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice cold. "Let me make sure I understand what you just said," she began. "You're offering me $50 million to stop investigating your criminal activities?" "I wouldn't put it that way," Trump said quickly, realizing he had made a mistake. "I'm offering to support your political career in exchange for focusing on issues where you can actually make a difference. By stopping my investigation into your money laundering operations?" "Now hold on," Trump said, his voice rising. "Nobody said anything about money laundering. I'm talking about supporting a rising political star. I'm talking about partnership. I'm talking about making sure you have the resources to really help your community." But Jasmine wasn't done. She was going to make him say it all. On the record, in his own words. "Donald," she said, her voice deadly calm. "Let's be very clear about what's happening here. You called my personal phone at midnight to offer me $50 million. You want me to take this money and stop asking questions about your businesses. That's bribery. That's a federal crime. And you just committed it on a recorded line." The panic in Trump's voice was immediate and obvious. "Recorded? What do you mean recorded? I never consented to being recorded. In Texas, only one party needs to consent to recording a phone conversation," Jasmine said. "I consented. This entire conversation is being preserved for posterity." What happened next was the sound of a man realizing his life was over. Trump didn't speak. He made sounds. Angry sounds. Panic sounds. The sounds of someone having a mental breakdown in real time. When he finally found his voice again, it was completely different. Gone was the fake friendliness. Gone was the businessman confidence. What remained was pure, desperate fear. "You can't use that recording," he said. "It's entrapment. It's illegal. I'll have you arrested." Jasmine's response was perfect. Calm, legal, devastating. Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce someone to commit a crime they wouldn't normally commit, she said. "I'm not law enforcement. I didn't induce you to do anything. You called me. You offered the bribe. You committed the crime entirely on your own initiative." The silence that followed was the sound of Donald Trump's world ending. But he wasn't done digging his own grave. "Look," he said, his voice now openly begging. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Maybe I wasn't clear about what I was offering. Let me be more specific." And then he made it worse. So much worse. "The $50 million isn't the only thing on the table," he said. "I have business interests all over the world. I have connections in every industry. I could make sure your family never wants for anything. Your children could go to any school they want. You could live anywhere you want. You could have anything you want. In exchange for? In exchange for being reasonable. In exchange for understanding that some rocks are better left unturned. In exchange for focusing your considerable talents on issues where you can actually make a positive difference. Jasmine let him finish. She let him dig the hole as deep as he wanted. And then she buried him in it. Donald, she said, you just offered me $50 million, promised to take care of my family, and suggested that I stop investigating your crimes in exchange for this money. You've committed bribery, attempted corruption of a federal official, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. And I have every word of it recorded in crystal clear audio. The sound that came through the phone next wasn't words. It was the sound of a man realizing he had just destroyed himself. A sound somewhere between a growl and a whimper. The sound of absolute defeat. When Trump finally spoke again, his voice was broken. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to hang up this phone, Jasmine said. I want you to call your lawyers. And I want you to prepare for the consequences of your actions. Please, Trump said. And the desperation in that one word was heartbreaking. Please don't do this. This will destroy me. This will destroy my family. This will destroy everything I've built. Jasmine's response was the most savage political moment in American history. Donald, she said, her voice as calm as a judge pronouncing sentence. You should have thought about that before you tried to bribe a federal official. You should have thought about that before you built your empire on corruption and crime. You should have thought about that before you decided that you were above the law. She paused, letting it sink in. But mostly, you should have thought about that before you messed with Jasmine Crockett. And then she hung up. The recording ended at 12:23 a.m. 36 minutes of the most damaging political audio ever captured. 36 minutes of Donald Trump confessing to federal crimes, begging for mercy, and realizing that his corruption had finally caught up with him. But Jasmine wasn't done. She had the recording, but she needed to use it strategically. She needed to make sure it had maximum impact. She needed to make sure that Trump couldn't find a way to spin it or deny it or make it disappear. So she waited. For 3 days, she sat on the most explosive political recording in history. She consulted with lawyers. She verified the legal implications. She made sure every procedural detail was perfect. And then, at exactly 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, she released it all. Not to the mainstream media. Not to political reporters. Not to the usual channels that Trump's team could pressure or influence. She released it directly to the internet. Unedited. Uncut. With full transcripts and legal analysis. She posted it simultaneously on every platform. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. She made it impossible to suppress or control. The reaction was immediate and nuclear. Within 5 minutes, the audio was trending on every platform. Within 10 minutes, it had been shared 1 million times. Within an hour, it was the most viral political content in internet history. But it wasn't just the numbers that were shocking. It was the reaction. People weren't just sharing the audio. They were analyzing it, dissecting it, creating memes, making remixes, turning Trump's desperate words into the soundtrack of his downfall. The most popular clip was the moment when Trump begged Jasmine not to release the recording. Someone had isolated that audio and put it on a loop with the caption, "The Sound of Justice." It got 50 million views in the first day. Another viral moment was when Trump offered to take care of Jasmine's family. That clip was being shared with captions like, "Corruption in real time," and "This is what desperation sounds like." But the most devastating viral content was Jasmine's final response. "You should have thought about that before you messed with Jasmine Crockett." That line became an instant meme. People were using it in response to everything. It became the sound of accountability finally catching up with power. The political reaction was swift and brutal. Republican leaders who had defended Trump for years suddenly found themselves unable to explain away a recorded bribery attempt. Democrats who had been calling for investigations suddenly had all the evidence they needed. Federal prosecutors announced they were opening an immediate investigation. The FBI executed search warrants on Trump's properties. Bank records were subpoenaed. Associates were being questioned. But the most satisfying reaction came from Trump himself. His first response was predictable. He claimed the recording was fake. He said it was AI-generated. He blamed it on deep state conspiracies. But voice analysis experts immediately confirmed the recording was authentic. Tech companies verified it hadn't been manipulated. Even Trump's own supporters started admitting they recognized his voice, his speech patterns, his desperate tone. Within 24 hours, Trump's narrative collapsed completely. He went from claiming the recording was fake to claiming it was taken out of context to claiming he was entrapped to finally admitting it was real but claiming bribery wasn't illegal. Each new excuse made him look more guilty. Each press statement dug the hole deeper. Each attempt to explain himself provided more evidence of his corruption. The legal consequences were immediate. Federal charges were filed within a week. Bribery, corruption, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Each count carrying decades in prison. But the political consequences were even more devastating. Trump's remaining allies abandoned him. His fundraising dried up completely. His poll numbers collapsed to single digits. More importantly, the recording had exposed the real Donald Trump. Not the showman. Not the businessman. Not the politician. The real man behind the mask. Desperate, corrupt, willing to commit any crime to save himself. And Jasmine? She became an instant icon. The woman who took down the most corrupt politician in American history with nothing but courage, intelligence, and a phone recording. Her approval ratings shot through the roof. Donations flooded into her campaigns. Speaking requests came from around the world. She had become the symbol of everything good about American democracy fighting against everything corrupt about American politics. But when reporters asked her how it felt to bring down Donald Trump, her answer was perfect. "I didn't bring down Donald Trump," she said. "He brought down himself. I just made sure everyone could hear him do it." 3 minutes ago, that recording leaked to the world. 3 minutes ago, the most corrupt politician in American history was finally held accountable. 3 minutes ago, justice won. And the beautiful part? It's just the beginning. Because federal investigators now have probable cause to examine every aspect of Trump's business empire. Every transaction, every deal, every connection. The $50 million bribe attempt wasn't the crime. It was the confession. The admission that there were crimes worth paying $50 million to hide. What those crimes are, we'll find out soon enough. But thanks to Jasmine Crockett's courage, we know they exist. Thanks to her intelligence, we have proof. Thanks to her integrity, justice is finally coming. This is what happens when someone with nothing to hide meets someone with everything to lose. This is what happens when courage confronts corruption. This is what happens when the people we elect actually fight for the people who elected them. If this story inspired you, share it with everyone you know. If this recording shocked you, make sure it reaches everyone who needs to hear it. If you believe in accountability, make sure this moment becomes the turning point we've all been waiting for. Like this video if you think corruption should have consequences. Subscribe if you want to see more politicians held accountable for their crimes. Ring that bell because some stories are too important to miss. And remember, in a world where power thinks it can buy anything, sometimes all it takes is one person with a phone recording to prove that some things will never be for sale. Justice isn't bought. It's earned. And today, thanks to Jasmine Crockett, it was finally delivered.